CIA actually does this sort of thing, you know, we would never put all of that in one letter. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't pass the smell test, which it doesn't after a week in the global news cycles where people are writing about it and reporting about it and going, geez, this is an awful lot in one letter.
Well, not only that, but it sounds like the talking points for Dick Cheney on all the Sunday shows. These were the main things that he was constantly raising.
Look, and again, McGuire and I talked a lot about this. I said, how does this fit in what CIA generally does? He says, well, actually, you know, this is not the kind of thing that we would do on our own. If you really want to do a deception, he explained to me, what you do is you get something a little off. You put in things that are clearly true, and then there's one part that you're interested in that you twist it just a teeny bit. Then maybe there's one other thing that's brand new. Again, so it has plausibility. Instead of this, which is really, as he said, check the box for all of the major political issues that the administration's facing at this moment about the march to war and false pretenses being under our Iraq case.
Now, the head of MI6, Richard Dearlove.
Yes, that's right.
What exactly does he say about the letter? First, you say he's startled that you even know about it.
He and I are not discussing the letter. He's discussing the front end of it. He's discussing the Haboosh mission and all of the British engagement, their hopes, in some cases their fears, and their reaction when the United States, after he says this very dangerous mission, he says this is a high-risk mission here, and there's fear at the start that maybe it's a trap. Maybe the British intelligence manager, an extraordinary agent, Michael Dearlove, who runs the Mideast for the British, that, you know, he might die. And one of the reasons it's in Jordan is that we have leverage in Jordan, again, through Rob Richer, the CIA intelligence official, because he's so close to the Jordanians. He is a very close associate of King Abdullah's and others in Jordan intelligence. That's why it's set up in Jordan. That's why everybody is on tenterhooks as it unfolds.
And presumably Saddam Hussein was aware that all this was going on.
It's a debate inside of the government, you know, and there's back and forth on that again in the exhaustive reporting on this, and it was exhaustive. I talked to many officials. Does Saddam know or does he not? All the way from the British to the Americans. There's debate. It's not clear Saddam knows. There's a sense he does. And, you know, and the fact is that at the end of the day, what everybody says is that it's clear, no matter if Saddam knew or not, that much of the intelligence provided by Haboosh, especially about the mind of Saddam Hussein, is something he never, ever would have authorized being revealed. Because it shows Saddam is addled, isolated, his fears, and ultimately that Saddam is not really exactly who we think he is at this point. All of that, as Richard says, is the most valuable intelligence we get from the Haboosh mission. It really gets us into the mind of Saddam Hussein. Also, fascinating, the operators inside of CIA were delighted that a window had been opened to Saddam Hussein. All the folks in the Iraq Operations Group, which is a vast group of operatives who are actually working Iraq, of which many of them had worked operations in Iraq for years. They're saying this is a golden opportunity. We have a window right into Saddam's inner circle through the intelligence chief Haboosh. We can put anything through that window. We can put misinformation through that window. We can turn Saddam in various directions. We even can send Haboosh in with a team to take Saddam out. As McGuire says, I think with great clarity, imagine then we could walk to Baghdad instead of fight our way to Baghdad. Something that could save many American lives. That debate is going on in January between the operators who are saying golden opportunity, this channel's been opened in January of 2003, and folks who are very anxious about the case for war, most of them from the White House. Two teams fighting when it's clear that the evidence from Haboosh is that there are no WMD, the White House gets spooked, and the White House cuts off the channel. Operators inside of CIA are livid. They're saying, my goodness, American lives are at stake here. You're cutting off the channel because you don't want to know more? And we have to now go forward without the advantages and opportunities that Haboosh might have provided. Meanwhile, of course, we had made our arrangement and we resettled Haboosh. But nonetheless, operationally, when it comes to Iraq, this is kind of an abomination, to be frank.
And who does Dearlove say, head of MI6,
yes,
British intelligence, who does he believe in the White House wants this to go forward? Does he feel that Bush wanted it from January and before that? Was it Bush?
From the beginning, I reported in a previous book, The Price of Loyalty, that it was from the first National Security Council meeting of this presidency, the president said, how are we going to do this? Not whether or why, but how. The fact is, inside of CIA, many people now echo that. They talk about that in the book. It was from the first Bush.
This was about Paul O'Neill, the Treasury Secretary.
Right, but throughout CIA, people involved in this say the same thing. It was about the very first meeting that the president wants to get Saddam Hussein. Now, mind you, Dearlove says, I think with real interesting clarity here, he talks about the fact that Cheney was pushing so ardently, so fiercely for war, that Bush ultimately almost hands over the basic responsibilities of the presidency. He says, Dearlove says, and it's sort of a grave finish to this interview, where he says it wasn't too late for Cheney. It was too late for Cheney when the intelligence comes, because he was going no matter what. But it was not too late for Bush to say, now, hold on a minute. Hold on the American public. Wait in terms of the whole world that is now behind us on this case for war. And I think that is where historical's judgment may be harshest.
This is a lot to take in, Chairman John Conyers, a big scope for your committee, for the House Judiciary Committee. Is there a chance that you would join together with the Senate? Is there a way the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence, maybe actually Ron Suskind, you could tell us, Jay Rockefeller is ahead of that. What exactly are their intentions? There are joint House-Senate committees.
Generally, and I'm sure Chairman Conyers would echo this, generally the way it has worked before is that there are joint engagements between the House Intelligence Committee and the Senate Intelligence Committee, because remember, they're very carefully constructed, where they have staff and of course, congressmen, congresspersons who have security clearance opportunities. They get to see things that the American public doesn't get to see. Sometimes there's small groups who get to see the most precious stuff because the administration, any administration is afraid of leaks. But generally, a joint effort between those two intelligence committees is the way it has worked in the past.
And what would that mean? What could Senate intelligence do? Jay Rockefeller.
Senate intelligence can move forward in ways that frankly, even Congressman Conyers, with his greatest ardor, would have trouble doing, again, because they can go into the shadows. They can talk directly to CIA and say, we understand this is classified, but we have people here who are charged to look at classified information in a kind of lockbox. CIA, traditionally CIA says, well, let's look for what you need. They tend to drag their feet. Sometimes they say it is problematic to even get this information to some people in Congress because there are ongoing operations. There are all manner of ways that CIA over these past few years has basically said, we'll give it to you when we're good and ready. This is not an instance, I don't think, of that, though, because if you have a violation of law, things do change. And if there is a stated violation of law, and the book seems it does indicate in its evidence that they're in that realm here, then Congress has more powers to say your executive privilege claims, which the White House often makes, they don't hold water in courts when there is the issue of wrongdoing.
I'd like to, you've written now several books, as you said, on this administration, and I'd like to ask you, for those who, looking at American history, say this is not the first time that presidents have fabricated reasons to go to war. John Quincy Adams accusing President Polk of fabricating reasons to go to war with Mexico, obviously the Gulf of Tonkin. What, in your view, makes this administration unique or distinct compared to the other lies that have been foisted on the American people in the past? You know,
look, the fact is we are ever in a pull and tug, an ebb and flow when it comes to these issues in terms of what the public says we have a right to know in a democracy, especially on issues of greatest import where young men and women may die in battle, and what an administration often will say, a president, to say, this is my business. You're on a need-to-know basis. I'll tell you what I believe you're supposed to know. This back and forth has gone on for many years. I think it's clear in these past few years that we've had a kind of hammerlock here between the cult of message, where frankly people are not having discussions that are real ones, certainly not in the Fourth Estate as we might have in previous decades, with senior officials, even with the president, where they're giving the good enough reasons that underlie action. A and B, combine that with an extraordinary spread of secrecy. You know, they are classifying everything down to the most minor documents. And I've looked at documents that are classified.